Hello again and welcome to another Warhammer 40k Imperial Guard Tactics video. So today we're going to do a sort of theory craft video on a really important tactic in 8th edition, which is screening. Now, some people to a greater or lesser extent know what screening is. And it's quite easy. Basically, rather than having your from an Imperial Guard standpoint, rather than having your tanks out front, you would have your tanks further back and your infantry in front as a screen. And you would do this and the main reason anyone screens in 8th edition is to help mitigate close combat. You see, it's much more desirable as a guard commander for you to lose 20, 30, 40 men to protect that tank. Because that tank is doing all the damage. The men aren't. The men are useful for holding objectives, sure, but generally, the purpose of the infantry in the Imperial Guard army is to screen the tanks. And so, the reason you don't want someone to get in close combat with your tanks is A, tanks suck in close combat, obviously, but B, tanks can't shoot once they've fallen back. Sure, if you've got a Hellhound, it can overwatch again, but what do you fucking do? Like, you want that Hellhound to be doing much more than just overwatching things to death. You want it to be running around doing proper damage. You want, what to do? You can use defensive gunners on your two Mordian Russes, but you still missed out on a shooting phase. So it's vitally important to learn how to screen effectively. Now, most Imperial Guard players do screen, but a lot of the time when I see Guard players screening, okay, it's not done as much as it should be. It's not done to the level it should be done. So, for example, what I'm saying here is you'll often see a Guard player who has got 3 or 4, 5 vehicles. We'll say 5 vehicles, a mixture of Leman Russes and other stuff, maybe Basilisks or Manticores. And he's got then he's got some units in Chimeras. So he's got a large chunk of his army invested in cool units like damage dealers, sort of Leman Russes, Manticores, Hellhounds, or vehicles. I mean, vast statistic pulled out my ass, but 90% of people that get into the Imperial Guard love the tanks. I mean, you only really, especially now, Games Workshop has canned all the old metal regiments. Well, you've only got one infantry squad choice to choose from. Like Space Marines who have got 3 different fucking tactical marine choices just for playing Space Marines alone. Mark 3, Mark 4, and then the current Mark 7/8 power armor. You've got you've got Blood Angels, got their own vibe. You've got Dark Angels, Space Wolves. You've got even conversion kits like Iron Hands. So much you can do with one squad. Guard don't really have that, not directly from Games Workshop. Sure, you can buy third-party bits, but anyway, without going on a tangent, you generally only have your one infantry squad. So most Guard players, who are getting into it, want to collect cool stuff. Which, perfect. Go ahead. Cool stuff is cool. But that's the issue, really, isn't it? Because you're naturally buying all these cool tanks, but then you've not really got enough stuff to screen them, and all it takes is for someone like me, and I have done this, to come along with their Genestealer cult army, ambush in 20 of a unit of my choice, let's say some neophytes, and just tie up half your army in one go. Just make you miss a shooting phase. And then do it again the next turn, and then do it again the third turn. It only takes, or Custodes to charge forward and just start tying everything up. It doesn't take a lot for an enemy to just effectively get through that screen. So, what I see a lot of Guard players do is they'll have 40 or 50 at a push, maybe 60 infantry, and they're strung out in a thin line in front of the army, and that's pretty cool. That kind of works. But the problem with that is it's not very hard for someone to get rid of that screen. Someone will, and at most it will buy you 1 turn. And when you think about it, at that point, yeah, it's bought you a turn. But then your infantry element of your army is gone. And so, even if you then somehow, destroy everything that was charging at you, you've still only got a bunch of one sort of units, tanks and stuff. And the enemy are still going to have OBSEC infantry and stuff, and you've lost your own ability to swamp objectives because you've only taken 60 infantry and it's just been killed. So, and it's not very hard for an enemy to punch through. I have myself taken a Land Raider Crusader stuffed full of Crusaders inside and pushed it forward. Used the, pushed it forward turn 1. It's taken a bit of damage turn 2, but I've got other stuff in my opponent's face as well. And then I've just used it to hose down some basic screening units, jump out, the Crusaders have jumped out and they charge forward and that's it. Very simple. Not even a competitive army, but very effective. So to screen effectively, you need to have at least, in my opinion, 2 lines of infantry. Because you've got to assume the first line's going to die. Okay, just assume the first 60 guys are dead. I mean, assume about 80 to 100 of you guys are dead. But for the purpose of screening, assume the first line is dead. And you can create an effective screen with about 50 people. So 60 to be, have just cover everywhere. So assume the first line is dead. Now, what you want to do is you want to deploy this first line pretty much at the very edge of your deployment zone. They're already dead. Trying to stay further back with them isn't going to help anyone. They're already dead. So push the first 60 guys out front. Big, long line, perfect. The second line behind that, you want to have, I like to be safe, you want to have it about 4.5 inches back from the line that's up front. Now the reason for this is consolidation. Okay? Consolidation. Because what the enemy will do is they will charge your first line, wipe it out, and then consolidate 3 inches if you're too close into your second line, and then your second line units aren't able to fully operate. Yes, you can fall back, but then you're wasting orders on things like get back in the fight, which you don't want to be doing. A decent amount of guard infantry, all with first rank fire, second rank fire on them, starts to become a little damage dealing there. So you want 2 lines essentially. Now there are obviously units that can fly, which will jump over the first line, but then you've got that's the key, isn't it? Really, you've got the second line. So if you only had 1 line of stuff, someone would charge forward with their venoms and other bits and bobs, and then they would just jump over. They'd move over the first line, and then you'd be screwed. But you've got your second line there protecting you, and if you do it just right, you can probably space it out where the unit has to stay 1 inch away from you, but it can't quite fit between the 2 lines. There's ways of doing it. So point is, you have that second line. So either A, it buys you a second turn, or B, it helps stop people from just getting through the first line and charging straight into your tanks like I did with my Land Raider. And C, it means you've got a reserve. Because otherwise, like I said, if someone just kills all your infantry, if you're using all your infantry for the first screen, then you've got no way of stopping. You've got no way of pulling up reserves and taking holding objectives after that point. So that's what's really, really important about having a proper good screen. Now, I generally, if any of you've watched my battle reports, I don't leave home without 100 infantry. I consider 100 infantry to be the bare minimum that any Imperial Guard force needs to leave home with. There are obviously exceptions. For example, my Steel Legion, I only have 60 infantry in there. Okay, but as I've described in other videos, I use my Chimeras as screening units. So when you think about it, I have 6 squads and 6 Chimeras. That's 12 screening units that screen for my Lehman Russes and my Sentinels, which do the vast majority of damage in my armor. So there you go. You want 100, so I don't leave that 100, 120 infantry. And when people go, oh my god, that's like, yeah, money-wise it's a bit of a ball ache, but you can always go on eBay and get second-hand models, and they're relatively cheap. There's always someone, somewhere in your local area who'll be selling a guard army. Just trust me, it's a natural phenomenon. It just always happens. There's always someone there selling the guard army. So some of you are saying, oh, that's a huge chunk of points. And it's like, well, no, it's not. It's 400 points. You know, it's not even a quarter. You know, it's nothing. It's barely red. It's like what, 20% of your points. It's nothing. You've put 20% of your points into something that will allow the other 80% of your army to keep firing, and that 20% itself will be able to pull the trigger a little bit. So there you go, guys. Just some general principles in screening. If any of you have watched my videos, if some of you will be like, oh, can you show us a practical example? Just go and look at one of my battle reports. I think the last Mordian Iron Guard one I did, where I had Mordian Iron Guard versus Blood Angels. Go and check that one out. You'll just see you'll see a good example of how I have my 2 lines in that video. Okay, so hope you guys have enjoyed this video. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.